In this video for lesson 20, we're going to take a quick review of the transformations we have seen in the past. You can download the notes and fill these out yourself. I'm going to walk you through the answers one by one. Let's look at translations. We started there. Translation simply moves from up or down the y-axis or left to right on the x-axis. Scaling, on the other hand, either widens or narrows the opening. And the reason that visual happens is because we're actually mathematically bringing those ordered pairs either closer or further away from the y-axis. When we are looking at vertical changes that happen up and down the y-axis versus horizontal changes that happen left to right on the x-axis, there are some very distinct differences between changes up and down and left to right that we will explore, and hopefully you'll be able to tell after the video. Let's look at our first translation when we add a number to our x. If the number is greater than 0, it's going to move up. As you see in the graph here, I added 2. If the number is less than 0, it's going to move down the y-axis. Now, if I wanted to move left or right on the x-axis, then I have to add or subtract inside the parentheses. So all those changes left, right happen inside the parentheses. Our next transformation is scaling. So if I'm going to have a scale factor that I'm going to multiply or have as a coefficient that's greater than 1, in this case I'm going to use 2, that will essentially bring the points closer to the y-axis by making them fast really quickly. So it's going to narrow up. And if I'm going to have a number that is less than 1, then it's going to widen my opening, bringing those ordered pairs farther away from the y-axis. Sometimes call this a stretch. Imagine if you were holding down the vertex as an elastic band and pulling it up towards the y-axis, and that's why we call that a stretch sometimes. The opposite happens when you're using a coefficient that's less than 1. So instead of it being a stretch, it's actually shrinking down. Now, sometimes when it's less than 1, it's also less than a negative 1, which brings you into negative coefficients. Anytime you have a negative, then of course it's going to reflect it across the x-axis. Now, if your coefficient is a fraction and not a whole number, then you're going to also experience shrinking and stretching. Let's look at changes on our horizontal axis now. If we have a coefficient that is greater than 1 and we want to multiply that by x before we square it, then we're going to see a widening as well. And the way that we would write that would be to enclose the coefficient inside the parentheses. So you're going to also see a narrow stretch there. If this number was less than 1, but also positive, then you're going to see a widen, shrink. The important thing to remember here is that those changes have to happen within the parentheses before you bring that product to the exponent, which is essentially the main difference between what happens vertically and what happens horizontally. There are changes that need to happen outside the parentheses and changes that need to happen outside of the parentheses. So it really depends what kind of transformation you want your graph to go through.